Just when we believed the Brown family had reached the bottom, Cody and Robyn made their most daring, most desperate attempt yet, a plan so brazen it blew up in their faces, revealing secrets that were supposed to be dead and buried forever. What follows will leave you stunned, and nobody saw it coming. For years, the Browns were a family the world couldn't turn away from. Reality TV cameras caught every conflict, every tear, and every betrayal on tape, creating a portrait of a family that seemed bigger than life. But beneath the glitz and the manufactured smiles, cracks were beginning to show, cracks that would eventually break the family apart. Cody Brown, who was once viewed as a dedicated patriarch, had constructed his persona meticulously over the years, controlling narratives, influencing perceptions, and keeping the limelight focused on him and Robyn, his dedicated and omnipresent wife. However, the outside world had evolved. Fans became wary, the network tightened its hold, and the money that used to come like clockwork started to evaporate. It was in the power and security vacuum that Cody and Robyn made a choice that would forever shape the next chapter of their lives, a choice so bold that it was nearly reckless. They started a campaign, presenting it as a cry for help, an 11th-hour effort to protect their home and bring stability to their kids. Each sentence was written to pull at the heartstrings, presenting them as victims of circumstance, victimized by the world, and unjustly maligned by those who had left. The words were selected so carefully, so theatrically, to present Cody as an aggrieved patriarch and Robyn as the loving, misinterpreted wife. But under all the words was a reality the public hadn't yet realized. Sources close to the family indicate that this wasn't merely a plea out of economic necessity, it was a desperate bid to salvage past errors. A lavish secret buy, impending mortgage crisis, and extravagant spending had put them in a tight spot. What seemed like vulnerability was really desperation masquerading as dignity. And when the campaign went up, a tiny ripple of suspicion emerged. Comments started to roll in, questions regarding money, the real use of the money, and the inconsistencies in their account. It wasn't long before the ripple turned to a wave. Fans, loyal and keenly attuned, started digging, checking against statements, property records, and old interviews. Each discrepancy, each exaggeration, each manipulative move was soon revealed. What started out as a private, personal cry for assistance was turned into a public spectacle, a forum for responsibility that Cody and Robyn hadn't counted on. Even as the world on the internet started to respond, internal dynamics within the family were changing. The ex-wives and sisters who had quietly relocated started living their lives in ways that accentuated Cody and Robyn's desperation. Basic, down-to-earth joy, productivity, and fiscal responsibility became a mirror reflecting the Browns' demise, ratcheting up the pressure on the couple. Cody and Robyn tried to take back the reins, attempting to spin the story, regain sympathy, and explain themselves. But every attempt they made only generated more scrutiny, transforming their carefully constructed image into an inadvertent exhibition of arrogance and denial. Fans ridiculed, news media covered the story, and social media became an unforgiving judge, jury, and executioner. And still, in spite of the embarrassment, the economic strain, and the global spotlight, Cody and Robyn weren't done. They were backed against the wall, broke, and hell-bent on taking back their story, no matter what the price would be. What they did next would bring their bravery to a whole new level, one nobody could have envisioned, and one that would leave the internet speechless. Everybody watched, and each click, each comment, each share was another spike into the coffin of their meticulously produced persona. The campaign went live, and within moments, the world started to respond. What Cody and Robyn had envisioned as a low-key plea for help descended into chaos. The initial comments were basic, probing questions: rebuild what? Is this really that necessary? But they soon mushroomed into a tidal wave of questioning and mocking. Browns fans began digging, drawing connections that the Browns had intended to keep secret. Property records, prior comments, and disclosures of finances were drawn into the limelight. All their assertions were challenged, each word examined. Before long, the GoFundMe comment section was in full-blown war. Scrutinizing fans, some of whom referred to themselves as the Sister Wives Detective Agency, would not let up. Links to their Flagstaff estate's estimated worth emerged, screenshots of previous boasts of financial security appeared, and estimates of TLC payouts appeared for the world to see. What was intended to garner sympathy soon became an online takedown of every misstep, every lavish buy, and every impulsive choice. The campaign, posed as a moral appeal to safeguard their children and home, was ripped apart within hours. Critics were merciless. Social media exploded with memes, pictures of Robyn weeping with fake tears, caption ridiculing her appeal, Cody sticking out in raving desperation with snarky remarks, and visual critiques pointing to the hundreds of thousands lost in expensive buys. The narrative turned into something more than a fundraiser. It turned into a public shame of failure, extravagance, and self-deception. Even her own relatives couldn't help but resist the unspoken remark. Christine presented photos of her own existence, covertly insulting vacations and moments of real joy, monetary security, and psychological calm, offering none of it in word against Cody or Robyn. Janelle demonstrated self-reliance and humility through her off-grid existence and work in the garden. Mary, more than occasionally enigmatic in her posts, shared quotes imbued with responsibility and honesty. The difference was stark, and for Cody and Robyn it would have hurt. Within their walls there was tension. The public failure of the campaign only made things more stressful. Robyn, the once level-headed woman of loyalty and sense, allegedly started to unravel under the scrutiny. Yelling at customer service queues, she demanded explanations, invoking freedom of speech and persecution. Cody, pacing and seething, accused the treacherous ex-wives of plotting a conspiracy against him. Paranoia and desperation set in as they saw control slipping completely out of their hands. And as the world looked on, GoFundMe itself came into the picture. Donations were held in abeyance, the campaign suspended temporarily, and formal investigations ensued. The Browns' lifeline of digital generosity was cut. Panic ensued. For the first time, the illusion of power and control that Cody and Robyn had assumed for so long began to seem tenuous, even vulnerable. They were caught in their own trap, unable to fix it, unable to escape the glare of public attention, and helpless to halt the relentless tide of revelation. Each effort to take back the narrative made things worse. Cuts to the campaign doubled down on victimhood, talking about a spiritual battle and enemies of truth while staying away from the real issue, their own reckless action. The public wasn't fooled. Each line meant to elicit sympathy, instead fed mockery, ridicule, and viral ire. Within less than 3 days, a plea to try to garner support had become a forum for public accountability, revealing not only their finances, but the disintegration of the very image they had been building for years. The pressure continued to build, the humiliation grew, and yet amidst all this turmoil, Cody and Robyn were already planning their next step. They were trapped, desperate, and hell-bent on taking back control. The coming days would show just how much they'd go, and how desperate they were willing to be. By the third day, things had happened beyond what Cody and Robyn could have hoped for. The GoFundMe page, once their ray of hope, was now a virtual battleground. Each scroll, each click, each notification served as a reminder of the attention they could no longer avoid. Fans, with facts and an endless hunger for accountability, were merciless. Each exaggeration, each false statement, each victimhood claim was revealed and analyzed. Robyn, once perceived as the devoted and unfazed wife, allegedly reached her breaking point. She lashed out in anger, trying to call the story back into their control, but every try only magnified the cacophony. Cody, fueled by paranoia, thought the attacks were staged by his ex-wives, certain that they were manipulating from the background to destroy him. The home that had previously represented status and security became a prison of tension, solitude, and dread. Each argument, each accusation, each look across the living room was now amplified with the weight of their deteriorating public image. Meanwhile, the internet waged its relentless public shaming. Screenshots of their previous financial choices, high-end consumer purchases, and reckless spending habits poured across forums, social media, and comment threads. Memes and snarky remarks went viral, making their desperation fodder for entertainment for millions. Their cry for help, once so meticulously planned to elicit sympathy, had morphed into a viral embarrassment. The stark comparison to the lives of their previous wives, stable, serene, and productive, only served to further fuel the public's interest and derision. Even GoFundMe joined in on the pressure. The site suspended donations, citing policy infractions. The Browns found themselves between a rock and hard place. Leave up the campaign, and they were subject to continuing public embarrassment. Remove it, and it would be an admission of defeat, the acknowledgement of their plan's failure. Hour after hour was a countdown, a virtual clock counting down the seconds until their ploy fell apart entirely. Behind the doors of their own home, feelings ran hot. Sources indicate Robyn, angry and afraid of losing it, bickered vociferously with Cody about how the campaign was conducted. Cody, for his part, descended into blame and suspicion, lashing out at everyone from the network to his former wives, refusing to acknowledge the fact that they themselves made the errors. Their innocent children, bystanders to this drama of high stakes, were drawn into the emotional maelstrom, their lives subtly manipulated as Robyn and Cody struggled to keep up appearances. The outside world was an unflinching mirror to their failures. Every headline, every Facebook post, every meme was a reminder that the illusion of influence and power was no more. All that remained was exposure, full, unrelenting, and inescapable. Their own attempts to paint themselves as victims of circumstance were now exposed as a complex web of ego, desperation, and manipulation. At this stage, the Browns had unleashed a storm they could not contain, a public scene where embarrassment, irony, and online justice converged, leaving them ensnared in the web of their own making. But still, even at the apex of this madness, Cody and Robyn were not finished. Cornered, embarrassed, and in desperation, they started scheming their next move, one that would set their audacity and unpredictability to a whole new level. The question now wasn't whether they would fail again, it was how dramatically they would do so. By day 4, the online whirlwind had reached its inevitable peak. GoFundMe, with mounting evidence and an avalanche of reports, moved swiftly. The donate button was disabled, the campaign suspended, and an official inquiry initiated. For Robyn and Cody, it was a moment of pure panic. The fantasy of control they had held onto for so long had been ripped away in an instant. The lifeline they had once believed would bail them out now loomed as a sword of Damocles above their heads, reminding them that the world was no longer believing their elaborately constructed story. Within the walls of the Churro Chateau, tensions came to a boil. Robyn allegedly shouted at the customer service line, her voice trembling with fear, frustration, and rage. Cody paced relentlessly, faulting all except himself. The network, the ex-wives, even the platform itself, nothing and no one was exempt from criticism in his mind. Paranoia had set in, and the walls of their home, a refuge, now rang out with accusation, anger, and despair. Meanwhile, the public show went on. Social media blew up with reaction upon reaction, and news media featured biting commentary on the guts of the campaign. Memes spread at light speed, Robyn's blubbering captioned with sarcasm that cut deep, Cody's panicky looks tagged with ridicule, and elaborate explanations of financial mishandling spread for all to gaze upon. Each of the Browns' efforts to defend themselves fueled the frenzy further, making a desperate cry a viral lesson in accountability and hubris. Their own clan, intentionally or not, continued to highlight the Browns' shame. Christine and her husband displayed stability and contentment. Janelle emphasized self-reliance and down-to-earth living, and Mary offered enigmatic but biting insights about truth and accountability. Even their children, once pieces in a greater game, were subtly drawn into the comparison, leaving Cody and Robyn alone not only from the public, but from those they had once relied on most. As the day continued, GoFundMe made the ultimate, irreversible move. The campaign was deleted in its entirety, erased from the site as if it never happened at all. Any donations that had seeped in were refunded, nullifying the few little wins they might have had. The Browns were left facing a pristine, unadorned record of failure. Their strategy, once meant to garner sympathy and affirmation, had been brought down to zero, a public document of misestimation, desperation, and unadulterated shame. For Cody and Robyn, the platform upon which they were to maintain their honor had now become the very vehicle for their defeat, leaving them open, embarrassed, and cornered like never before. But even after full public humiliation, failure, and self-shame, Cody and Robyn were not done. At home, they started making plans for the next phase of their battle, a last, desperate attempt to regain power, rewrite history, and save the pieces of the wildly constructed empire they had created. Their desperation had reached new heights, and the next move promised to be as dramatic and shocking as the collapse that preceded it. After the shutdown of the campaign, Cody and Robyn felt the walls of the Churro Chateau shutting in around them. The private reality was much harsher than the public display, and the humiliation was unrelenting. No one was able to witness the hysteria that seized them behind closed doors, the battles that flared with frightening ferocity, or the occasional moments of stunned despair that neither would acknowledge to anyone else. Their bulwark of mastery had fallen, and only the unvarnished, unprotected effects of their behavior remained. Robyn, who had long been the dutiful and logical peacemaker, allegedly dived into a maelstrom of rage and terror. She tried to keep her cool as a collision of reality and desire to preserve the family reputation threatened to break loose. Cody, who had once been so assured and in charge, was now a shadow of the man he had once been, paranoid, furious, and growing more volatile by the day. Every choice, every accusation, every passing gesture of excuse served only to heighten the tension. Their children, witnesses to a reality they could hardly comprehend, were mute accomplices in a drama they could not control. The home, which should have been a refuge and haven of comfort, was instead replete with shouting, recrimination, and the constant underlying fear. Apparently, Robyn blamed Cody for being reckless, holding him responsible for the economic meltdown, while Cody responded by saying it was Robyn's presence and steadfast loyalty that had encouraged his worst choices. The blame game and deflection went on endlessly. Outside, the public watched with wonder. Social media magnified every mistake, every misstep, every off-camera moment. Memes, headlines, and fan rants created a lurid portrait of the Browns' meltdown. Each tweet, each article, each viral response was a reminder that their carefully constructed persona had been destroyed. The comparison to their ex-wives' lives, quiet, productive, and rooted, was a constant counterpoint, underscoring the extent of Cody and Robyn's isolation and defeat. And yet, even within this pressure cooker of despair, whispers were already being made in the dark. Cody and Robyn, cornered and desperate, needed a way to take back control. A new platform, a new strategy, a new attempt to bend the narrative to their will, something which could flip the script, or at least provide the illusion thereof. Their vision of a comeback, no matter how unrealistic, was driven by ego, fear, and refusal to acknowledge defeat. Behind the closed doors of their home, out of public view, Cody and Robyn stood facing the most bitter reality. They had lost all the things they wanted to control, but their motivation to reascend to power was only increasing. The tension within the Churro Chateau was more than a private drama. It was a time bomb waiting to explode. Each word, each fight, each tantrum paved the way for what was next. The virtual defeat had become a catalyst for disaster in the real world, and the next steps, whose secret destinations no one yet knew, promised to be as dramatic and relentless as the fall that had led them here. With the GoFundMe page wiped and public shame at its highest point, Cody and Robyn found themselves grasping for a lifeline, any means to take back control of their story. Mainstream outlets had failed them. The network had moved away. Mainstream media had made their exposure into a spectacle. There was no going back, no withdrawal. The Browns had to find a new stage, and the one they found was their own YouTube. A week later, having moved on from the collapse of the campaign, they posted their first video. Shot on a wobbly phone, with poor lighting and a living room that was cramped by tension, the video was a raw grab at taking back the narrative. Cody sat stiffly, eyes flashing, a combination of desperation and paranoia on his face. He talked of spiritual battle, of enemies plotting against them, of a system hell-bent on shutting down their truth. The financial crisis, the RV purchase, the McMansion, the GoFundMe flop, all were left out. He presented himself instead as a martyr, a truth-teller struggling against a corrupt establishment. Robyn came next, her tone a compound of tears and venom. She portrayed herself as the ultimate victim, victimized and mocked in attempting to defend her family. Her language characterized her ex-wives as enemies, actively praying for the demise of the Browns. She talked of love, loyalty, and the horror of abandonment, but beneath the guise of sorrow was a razor's edge of manipulation. Each sob, each hesitation, each look at the camera was a deliberate plea for emotion, but the public saw through it. The reaction was swift and savage. The ratio of likes to dislikes was brutally negative, with comments pouring in full of ridicule, ire, and fact-check disdain. Screenshots of bank accounts, memes celebrating previous excess, and side-by-side juxtapositions with their previous wives' sensible lives clogged every site. The bid to manage the narrative had fallen spectacularly. The YouTube video, meant to be a white knight for their reputation, was another page in the public drama of their crash. For Cody and Robyn, the digital forum they had so hoped would exonerate them became yet another platform of humiliation, where every word was examined, every feeling analyzed, and every deception exposed. Behind closed doors, frustration gave way to anger. Cody allegedly vented, pacing and yelling, blaming everyone from the press to his former wives. Robyn, similarly frustrated, allegedly accused him of arrogance and madcap planning, igniting arguments that threatened to grow even more volatile. Their children, once quiet witnesses, were swept up in the maelstrom of blame, stress, and desperation. Even as the world was watching, Cody and Robyn were allegedly scheming their next step. The YouTube failure had not disillusioned them, it had only made them more desperate. They were already murmuring about another project, one last try to regain control and be relevant again. Their ego, their ambition, and their fear of being irrelevant were compelling them toward a decision that threatened to be as bold and disastrous as anything previous. By the time the YouTube clip was posted, the Browns' universe had started to seem irretrievably coming apart. The online backlash was savage, and efforts at presenting themselves as victims only increased public scrutiny. Each posting, each forwarded meme, each news article chronicling their unsuccessful campaign eroded what was left of their credibility. Cody and Robyn were no longer merely private citizens, so they were becoming symbols of self-created turmoil, a cautionary story unfolding in real time for the world to see. Behind the walls of the Churro Chateau, fissures in their partnership grew more obvious. Accounts indicate that disagreements progressed to full-blown altercations, in which past resentments were brought out together with new panic. Robyn supposedly accused Cody of the outrageous and irresponsible GoFundMe campaign, while Cody shot back, saying she had goaded his lofty ideas and facilitated the fiscal mismanagement. Their house, which was once a manifestation of wealth and authority, now became a cage, each corner a memory of their shortcomings and every moment a tinder for war. In the meantime, the public spectacle grew. Media covered the YouTube video, analyzing their words, ridiculing their excuses, and emphasizing the comparison with the serene, earthy lives of Christine, Janelle, and Mary. The internet served as an uncaring echo chamber, sharing each blunder, every emotional meltdown, and each momentary loss of judgment and streaming it for critique. The online forum had become a court of law, and Cody and Robyn defendants to everyone's worldwide judgment. For Cody and Robyn, the walls were closing in, not just in their house, but across the whole online world. Every effort to take control only fueled the flames of exposure and mockery. In the midst of chaos, murmurs started circulating about their next move out of desperation. People close to them said the Browns were thinking of making a last, bold attempt to regain relevance, a standalone project, something that could again make them victims of a world that was bent on failing them. They were pinned to a corner, and cornered individuals have a tendency to play risky. Every thought, however absurd, was being considered with a combination of fear and unyielding desire. Even as the public ridiculed, dissected, and argued over their every step, the Browns were allegedly planning in private. The YouTube debacle had not put out the flames of their efforts to be noticed, it had fueled them. They were indeed gearing up for one final play, one final shot at establishing their story and claiming their place in the public consciousness. But this step, as with all that had preceded it, held the restorative power of full and irreparable exposure. By session 7, Cody and Robyn were caught in a pattern of desperation and illusion. The cyber world had deprived them of agency, their family was estranged or apathetic, and each step they made now had consequences enlarged by the judgment of millions. The question hung over them: how far would they venture in their final desperate attempt at relevance, and at what cost would they finally pay? The aftermath of the YouTube debacle was the last act of Cody and Robyn's deterioration. The public spectacle had reached its peak, and now they were cornered, alone, and under constant scrutiny. All of their actions, all of their posts, all of the words they used in secret or on the internet weighed heavily with consequence. Their efforts to regain control had previously failed again and again, and now, it appeared, there was no turning back. Sources close to the Browns claim that they started looking into one final daring plan, a tell-all memoir. Not a small tome, but a full-blown effort to reshape the past, defend themselves and call in long-standing debts. The working title allegedly bandied about was Patriarchy Lost: How a Godly Family Was Sacrificed for Reality TV Ratings. In their imaginations, this was the last play, a means of taking back the story, establishing dominance over the narrative, and profiting one more time. The desperation was evident. They were not only battling over money, they were battling over relevance, vindication, and the appearance of control they had lost so publicly. Each day within the Churro Chateau was a pressure cooker. Fights went on, accusations flew back, and the emotional cost compounded. Robyn's tearful appeals now combined with biting criticism of Cody's previous choices, and Cody meanwhile descended into paranoia, finding enemies in every nook, plots in every criticism. Their children stuck in the middle, were bearers witness to a world falling apart around them, a world their parents could no longer control or master. Cornered and desperate, Cody and Robyn were prepared to risk everything financially, emotionally and socially on one last roll of the dice, to reclaim the story that had long since slipped from their grasp. The public remained transfixed in wonder and incredulity. Every morsel of inside information, every tweet, every meme was another strand in the unspooling drama. Ex-wives Christine, Janelle, and Mary spoke little about the situation publicly, but their lives did the talking: stability, independence, and a quiet sense of triumph over chaos that Cody and Robyn could no longer manage. The contrast was not more stark, and the message to the Browns was undisputed. Control is an illusion, and consequences follow action. As the rumors about the book spread louder, so did speculation regarding the Browns' final destiny. Would they manage to cash in on their delusion? Would they eventually be foreclosed, face legal action, and public ridicule? The answers were unclear, but one thing was certain: they had hit the peak of self-inflicted humiliation, and each subsequent frantic scheme only intensified the public's interest in their failure. The tale of Cody and Robyn's downfall is a cautionary one of ego, delusion, and the unforgiving aftermath of choices made without consequence. From the brazen GoFundMe appeal to the rabid YouTube rant, and now the last desperate whispers of a burn-it-to-the-ground tell-all book, the Browns saga is a masterful lesson in how power, control, and desperation intersect in the most spectacularly public means possible. What will be the ultimate chapter for Cody and Robyn? Will the tell-all to me ever see the light of day? Or will it become the latest installment on the long shelf of failed efforts to regain relevance? Will they get their comeuppance for their crimes? Or will they continue to spin out of control in relative seclusion, pursuing the illusion of power that has ever been ever so slightly beyond their grasp? The answers are out there, waiting to be revealed, and the world will be watching every step.